Hello everyone and welcome back to the HSE People virtual exhibition. We're live on the stage and I'm joined by Natasha Porter and Schroeder from Gensuite. They are going to discuss a very relevant and important subject with you, and that is pandemic and operations critical PPE tracking, the PPE Inventory Manager. So I'm going to hand you over to the Gensuite specialists, and if you've got any questions, if you can just type them in the right hand side, then I'm sure Natasha and Amber will do what they can to get to you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Actually, we do have a question, if you don't mind posting too in the chat regarding where you can take the poll. There should be a poll tab on the right side of your screen that you can click. Amber and I have a poll that is starting now at the beginning of this presentation, and then we'll also have one at the end of the presentation as well. So I'd like to welcome everybody to our Pandemic and Operations Critical PPE Tracking session. As Rebecca had mentioned, Amber and I are really here with you today to share with you a little bit about the story of what we've been working on with our subscriber community over the past couple of months. And Amber, if we go to the agenda, we can give you a sense of what our plan is for today. I'm going to start off with a little bit of an introduction and some background about Gensuite and what we do to provide some context. And then we're going to talk about some PPE management and tracking needs that we heard from users in our subscriber community, really as this pandemic has unfolded globally this year. And we took those key needs and really translated that into a digital solution that is being launched and deployed by a number of our subscribers. So what we want to do is take you through an online demo of that and really share some best practices from how folks are going about implementing the application solution. And then we'll also have some time at the end of the session for Q&A as well. If there's any questions that you have, you can feel free to post it in the chat. And both Amber and I can see those messages as they're coming through. So it looks like Ron got into the poll, which is great. All right, so let's go in. I'll talk a little bit about background on Gensuite. So we are a fully hosted software as a service solution provider. So we have about 65 different application modules that are offered for our subscribers to use in a number of different media and area, depending on priorities and needs. And our goal really has been to develop out these solutions over time as an engaging platform that frontline users get immediate and direct value from, and that senior leaders in an organization can benefit from tapping into that data and information that's being managed in that software solution. You're going to see aspects of both of those: ease of use for frontline users and the value that the businesses can get from mining data in the PPE example that we're going to talk about today. So we have a cloud-based solution. It's a single version software. We have our objective really is to provide a streamlined collaboration platform for folks, and very easy to use and get plugged into. And I'm going to show in just a minute the listing of our applications and where this PPE Manager application fits kind of in Gensuite's offering. A little bit about our history, if we go to the next slide, just to kind of give you a perspective on where we started and how long we've been in business. We actually started the development of the Gensuite applications back in the late 90s in one of GE's industrial businesses, and have really had the opportunity to grow and expand the platform of offerings over the last 20 years. And we work with over 250 global companies now to deploy Gensuite. And we actually hit our 1 million user mark, which was really, really exciting to see, to be able to have that many folks engaged in utilizing the software has really been an exciting and significant milestone in the company history. So where, what does Gensuite look like in terms of applications, and where does the PPE Manager solution fit in? If we go to the next slide here, what you're going to see is our comprehensive environmental health and safety and security solution suite. It's broken out by category, so you can think about different types of solutions for auditing and compliance needs, or incident management needs, or environmental sustainability needs, etc. And you'll see over on the right-hand side of the screen, we have a suite of tools really that help support health and safety programs. And the PPE Manager solution we're going to look at is one of the newest tools or applications in that suite. And these are offered to our subscribers essentially on an as-needed basis, so you can pick one or multiple applications in each of these suites. It's really based on your needs and priorities. So I think with that introduction, Amber, I'd like to turn it over to you now to share with our audience a little bit more about kind of the business needs that we were hearing about from our user community earlier this year related to pandemic and operations critical PPE, and how we translated those key needs into the solution that you're going to demo in a few minutes.
Thank you, Natasha. All right, so as we were developing out our PPE Manager application, we did work with several businesses just to learn more about their needs and their goals when it comes to PPE management and tracking. And some of the feedback that we heard from those businesses were that they were really looking for a tool that would help them define not only pandemic-related PPE like face masks and gloves, but also operations critical PPE. So this application can be used both during the pandemic, but outside of the pandemic as well. And really the business had an ultimate goal of optimizing their supply of PPE. So being able to track which of their sites had what type of PPE, how much of that PPE, that way they could determine when they would need to repurchase certain items, or if they could share certain inventory across locations. So within the PPE Manager application, you'll see that we do have a burn rate, as well as a report that will let you view those inventory across all of your sites within the business. So what are some of the key capabilities of the Gensuite PPE Manager application? It does allow you to designate distinct PPE categories at the overall business level. You can see some examples of PPE categories here, like cloth face coverings, disinfectants, or gloves. And then each site has the ability to input individual PPE items within those categories and track the inventory for those items as well. There is an online data mining report, which I mentioned, that allows you to run a report business-wide across all sites. And we do have the ability to integrate with any existing inventory systems that you may be using at your business. So at this point, I would like to go online and show you guys a demo of the application. That way we can talk through it in a little bit more detail. I have my browser open and I am zoomed in quite a bit just so it's easier for you to see what's on my screen. Here we have the Gensuite homepage. This allows users to access their site within Gensuite, as well as any applications that are enabled. You can see the PPE Manager application down here at the bottom. And if I click this link, it will open up the PPE Manager application. And here I can view the PPE Manager homepage. So from here, I can see my PPE categories that have been established at the business level. I can also see how many individual PPE items there are within each category, as well as the current inventory for my site, what the projected need is for my site, and how many periods will be covered based on that current inventory. I can click on each of these hyperlinks to open up a pop-up window and see more information, and also add or edit the information based on my permissions within the tool. So for example, if I click on gloves here, what will happen is it will open up this pop-up window. And since I do have the ability to add or edit, you'll see here that I can actually update the number of gloves that are needed per period. I can select what the period may be, whether it's weekly, monthly, or annually. And I can also type in some comments regarding the need basis. This is for the overall PPE category level. I can also make edits or add information at the individual item level. So you'll see, as an example, I have pulled up the gloves category, and I have various PPE items already entered. For the PPE item, I do want to specify the name of the PPE as well as the manufacturer and model details. That way I can be very specific in terms of the PPE item. I can also input a purchasing code and a description. And then for each item, I can specify the current inventory. And again, I am able to make edits to this information directly within the pop-up window.
Amber, I have a question for you here as folks are looking at this. You know, I know when we talked with our users, we talked a lot about frequency for doing these updates. Did you want to comment a little bit on what is kind of a frequency consideration for going in and updating this, and what our users and subscribers have been talking about?
Yes, so we have heard various feedback based on both the size of the location as well as the type of operations at that site. Many sites are going to be updating this on a weekly basis. So for example, every Friday, it will be someone's responsibility to come into the tool and make updates to the current inventory. For some other locations that we've worked with, they are updating their inventory on a monthly basis. So again, it's really going to be based on your site-specific needs as to when you are updating this inventory. Typically, we have seen weekly or monthly.
I think the other thing that also has come up in the discussion is if folks have some source of this data from sourcing or available through another system, that we could actually do an integration using an API to be able to automatically map and connect that information to update the PPE Manager solution. So that's another aspect, again, depending on really what the sites have access to or what they're currently using, a way to be able to connect some of those key critical components together.
Yes, exactly. Yep, we do have those capabilities, and we would be happy to discuss that further with any of you who may be interested. So this is really the pop-up capabilities to add or edit the inventory based on what you input into this box that is going to impact the homepage. So this will be refreshed based on any inputs that you provide. That way, at any point in time, you can access the homepage to see the current inventory, the periods that are covered. There's also a manage homepage that you'll see here. Every application in Gensuite does have a permission model. So based on the permission that you give to each user, they will have the ability to access certain pages or do certain activities within the tool. If you do have the level of permission to access Manage page, this will give you the ability to really see and update all of the items across all of the categories at once. So this gives you sort of a batch feature to add or edit any additional PPE items or inventory details. You can see some examples here, and then I also have the ability to archive an item as well. So this is it's a similar functionality, but it is going to be focused more on overall management based on the user's permissions.
Hey, Amber, we do have a comment in the chat that I wanted to share with you from Ron. He had just mentioned that he sells PPE supplies, and we might be able to coordinate something. They manage their inventory on spreadsheets currently. So yeah, Ron, it's a great point, because what we were seeing in March and April timeframe is the businesses that we've been supporting were really scrambling to try to get a sense of what was the current supply of pandemic and operations critical PPE. And everybody was starting with spreadsheets, but it was just really becoming challenging to combine all of that information together and keep it up to date. So we really wanted this tool to have a simple spreadsheet-like feel that's very easy to upload data or integrate data through an API, but really provides the power of being able to run quick reports and generate outputs that if you have multiple Excels doing that can be a little bit more challenging. So yeah, we can definitely connect with you and chat a little bit about how we might be able to potentially work together as well.
Great, thanks for that comment, Ron. I also wanted to showcase the data mining report, which we have available. This gives you an output of all of the categories and items, as well as the inventory details across all of your sites within your business. That way you're able to view, like I mentioned previously, whether or not one site may have, an excess of gloves, they may be able to share some of those gloves with another location. There is also an Excel output for this as well, so that you can download the report into Excel and filter on any data or take a closer look at any details. So this is, again, kind of a high-level overview of the PPE Manager application. It is a new application that we've developed based on feedback from a number of different subscribers that we've been working with. And so far, we have received very positive feedback. I do want to flip back over to the PowerPoint. Before I do that, though, just want to take a pause for a moment and see if there's any other questions, or Natasha, if you had anything else to add on the demo. Okay, it looks like Rebecca mentioned that someone has a question.
Let's see. Rebecca, we might need your help to figure out how to get to the private questions.
Okay, it looks like the question is, how long did it take to develop this tool? Okay, so I can provide a few comments, and then Natasha, feel free to chime in as well. We actually used a sort of an existing tool that we had as a basis for this. So it is something that has partially existed for several years now, but we did enhance it to add inventory tracking specifically to meet the needs for pandemic and operations critical PPE. And that is something that, as Natasha mentioned, we have been working on since around March, April timeframe. And we are continuing to enhance the tool based on feedback that we have received.
And I think in terms of just like pure development, testing, verification, and release time frame, it was about like 4 weeks to get with our subscribers, really take a look at some of the mock-ups and designs that we had, get their feedback, incorporate that, and in parallel, we were running the build as well. And as Amber mentioned, we have a safety risk assessment tool or a job safety analysis tool that had a component integrated into it for PPE, because when you're doing a safety risk assessment or a job safety analysis, you've got to document and account for PPE specific for that job task. So we used that as kind of a benchmark and a guide as we created this standalone PPE inventory management tool. So about 4 weeks to develop, and then what Amber's going to show here in just a minute is a case study of one of our subscribers that has already launched this worldwide, and some of their best practices and strategies that they're using for this solution. So you'll see that in just a minute.
Natasha, it looks like we do have a couple more questions. One of them is cost captured anywhere?
We didn't get a request actually for that as a field in here. It was more about the inventory and quantities to start, but we could definitely expand it to include cost. I think right now the priority for the users was inventory based right now, and just being able to have the counts and be able to look at burn rate, so you know how much you're using, and be able to show moving forward per week or per month, what are you going to need for that particular type of PPE, so you ensure that your supplies are not low.
Also a question from Ron, do we have a way to manage a library of documentation for the different products, for example, pictures and certifications?
We don't have that in here yet. That's a cool idea. I think we could definitely include that, essentially like attachments or reference information. This is kind of, again, more focused on the just inventory, supply, and burn rate aspects. But you know, we could absolutely extend it to have additional reference information for the different types of PPE. I think that's a great idea.
Also a question, Ron also mentioned that we could potentially integrate with Dropbox links or something like that, which is a great idea. Another question, does the report help flag opportunities where inventory is lacking and the time frame when it is needed, etc., to help management look at a dashboard?
Yeah, Amber, did you want to bring up some of the reporting capability to answer that?
Sure. So I think there's a few things on the homepage here. I know this is where you can see the current inventory as well as the need and the periods covered. So this is where you would be able to see if it's coming up short. For example, this one only has half a month covered. So this may be something that you know, management needs to take a look at and go ahead and purchase additional PPE items here. So this information is available directly on the homepage, but also within, for example, the data mining report. If I scroll, my browser is zoomed in a lot here, but you can see the current inventory as well as the number needed per period here as well within the report. In terms of actually, I guess, flagging, we do not have email notifications currently, but it is something that we have been discussing and something that could potentially be added here as well to send out reminders or, I guess, notices of any PPE items that are running low on inventory.
And our strategy really, actually, since the beginning, when we started developing tools for Gensuite, you know, holds true today as well. As our goal is to kind of build quick and be able to get a solution that meets the user, frontline, and business users' objectives quickly, and then to continue to expand and enhance that functionality as additional needs grow and come up as a priority. Because I saw another really great idea in the question here about how product recall is implemented in here. I think the businesses that have launched this so far, they haven't even had that yet, so it hasn't come up as a question. I'd probably recommend right now, as the functionality exists, that we could update the PPE category with like a recall flag in here and archive that category, so you still have the information available for reporting purposes, but it's not part of the active list that people can select and actually put an inventory on if they need to essentially return it and no longer use it. That's probably the immediate solution I would provide to someone. I think we could probably enhance that also further and put some additional kind of aspects to track recall details specific for each site, and do that essentially as a phase 2 enhancement.
Great. It looks like we have addressed the questions in the chat currently. At this point in time, I'm going to go ahead and flip back over to our PowerPoint so we can take a look at a deployment example. Again, feel free if there are any questions to post them in the chat and we will be monitoring those. So we are going to take a look here at a quick case study of a Gensuite subscriber who has deployed the PPE Manager application globally. This subscriber is a global supplier of food and beverage ingredients, and their goal was really to launch the application globally across 40 sites. Their initial focus is to track face masks. So they really started specifically with face masks, with their ultimate goal of expanding into other categories later in the year. So we were able to deploy this application for them in less than 2 weeks, just setting up the PPE categories, helping them get started. We do have sort of a base deployment plan here that you can see. So as part of phase 1, the business decided that they would be updating their inventory weekly. And they will also be running reports weekly as well. So for example, on Fridays, they're asking all of their sites to go in and update their inventory. And then on Monday morning, the management is running a report to look at those updates. The Gensuite team also created a 5-minute training video that could be shared with all of the users so that they could learn how to utilize this application. And then, as I mentioned, as a phase 2 deployment, their goal is to expand the use of PPE Manager to cover additional PPE categories, but also to expand it to other sites who may not have a PPE management system currently. So really going beyond pandemic-related PPE and focusing also on that operational critical PPE.
Right now, as we've been kind of going through this journey with the sites and businesses, originally we were thinking that this could be deployed initially on a much broader scale, but I think just based on the needs to ensure that pandemic specific PPE, masks or disinfectants as well are being tracked in here. Even temperature reading solutions are being tracked in here. That's really the core focus, and actually allows the sites and businesses to launch the tool faster because they're zeroing in on specific select type of PPE that's a priority right now. And I think as things in the supply chain for PPE level out a little bit more, that's when sites and businesses will expand the usage of this for other types of more commonly used PPE. Might be safety glasses or hard hats and things like that folks are using in operations settings.
Yes, and we did have a comment in the chat just indicating that a training video is an excellent idea. I would say that we have received great feedback on that as well, especially with many employees working from home right now. A training video can be very helpful.
Amber, do you want to talk a little bit about how we structured the training video in terms of length and how we framed it? Just some best practice sharing there for folks on the call. Because I think that the training's important, but it also can't be 30 minutes long. So how do you make it engaging and informational and to the point? Right. So why don't you share a little bit more about that?
Right. Yes. Our goal was to keep the video, short and engaging, but also provide enough information for users to be able to get started with the application. So this is around 5-minute training video. We did incorporate business specific expectations or goals. So at the beginning of the video, we do have the company logo. We introduce who the administrator would be if there's any questions from a business perspective. We do go into details or examples on how you can update the PPE Manager application. And then we also have just sort of a quick summary at the end highlighting how you can use some other Gensuite applications for email notifications, or if there's any questions, how you can submit those to the Gensuite team as well. So this is like I said, very engaging, quick video that will allow users to learn more about the application.
Yeah, and I would say that there's kind of like 3 main aspects too of the training video, which I think are impactful, and the medium in which we're delivering the message changes. So there's 3 distinct segments. The first is actually having one of our team members be behind, in front of a kind of screen, if you will, and add a personal touch to it at the beginning. So really to connect with the virtual audience. Then, as Amber had shared, there are some business specific expectations, more information that's prepared, I think, in a very creative way in the video. And the last portion is really the online demo piece with some specific call outs to kind of keep the user's attention as they are looking through the training. So I think that's just a best practice or a tip I would suggest if you're exploring or creating small training videos for things like this or for other applications. Thinking about changing up the mode in which you're delivering information is a really great way to engage with the users.
Yep, definitely. And we also had a question asking if it would be possible for us to share these PowerPoints for further study and feedback. Yes, I believe Rebecca will be providing the presentation materials after the conference. You can also stop by our Gensuite virtual booth. We also have a Gensuite website where you can reach out and contact us as well. And I believe that takes us to our sort of final few slides here. Wanted to open it up for a quick question and answer. It looks like so far we have addressed the questions in the chat. As I mentioned, we do have a virtual booth here at the conference. Feel free to stop by that virtual booth if you have any additional questions or would like to discuss further. You can also contact us on our Gensuite website. We do have a question, Natasha, from Rebecca. Someone has asked if the software is available for all business sizes.
Yeah, great question. We actually offer Gensuite for any size and scale of a business. We actually have kind of two primary offerings, if you will, more of an enterprise-wide deployment for larger, medium and larger scale businesses. And then we also have something called Gensuite Ready that is a really great out-of-the-box plug-and-play solution that has been used by a number of like single individual sites. Might only be one site with 50 to 100 people, but that site really wants to use a digital solution to be able to track PPE inventories like we're showing here or for other applications. So you can really pick and choose the scale at which you want to deploy for Gensuite, as well as the applications that I had showed earlier. I'll ask a question to you, Amber. So why don't you share with everybody a little bit about kind of what we're thinking about next? Obviously, this is phase one for the PPE inventory tool. And as I talked about, I mean, you know, Gensuite's model is very much kind of an evolutionary model where we get something out quick that's going to provide immediate value and benefit to the users, and then we iterate off of that and develop additional kind of aspects. You want to share a little bit of your thoughts there with the group?
Sure. So beginning in about a month or two, we are going to regroup with various businesses who have been using the PPE Manager application. Again, just to get additional feedback on any potential usability improvements or enhancements. We will be working to further improve the tool, as well as implement additional capabilities. Some things we have discussed so far are things like email notifications, potentially a barcode scanning capability or things like that. Just really gathering the group back together to further expand and improve upon that functionality.
I think another learning that I'll share as well is which has been interesting to see is each business really has a different strategy in mind for use of this solution. You know, with that case study that we shared with you, that particular business is deploying this PPE inventory management solution for all of their sites globally, specifically for pandemic critical PPE. We have a different business team that is actually just focusing on using the PPE Inventory Manager solution for the US sites only, because that's actually where they have the biggest need right now to better coordinate supply and inventory and need. So they're taking a different approach and then want to evaluate as a phase two broader global expansion beyond PPE for pandemic use, and not just in the US, but globally. So there's a lot of different ways that folks can approach this. I think the takeaway and learning we've had is, base the deployment strategy based on the need that you have in the business. And that may look very different from the needs that other businesses have.
We did have Ron request a follow-up. So Ron, I just sent you a quick message. If you're able to provide me with your email address and company name, we can definitely send you a follow-up information. Another question from Rebecca. I have heard a couple mentions of weekly calls related to pandemic management, best practice. Could you give us some highlights from those calls?
Yeah, we've actually been hosting COVID-19 specific best practice sharing calls on Fridays since I think mid-March. Honestly, I think I've lost track. I think everybody has, especially working remote and just all the things we're juggling. But I think we've done a total of about 10 calls so far. It is an open call across our subscriber community as well as our partner community. We've also gotten some requests from folks that are outside of our subscriber community with interest in joining, and we've invited those folks to come in. And the way we've structured those meetings is first, we will have some regulatory experts provide updates on new COVID-19 related reg changes that are coming through. I mean, there's changes, it was daily, a month or so ago from specific states in the US. And then we've also had a partner of ours share updates for global regulatory requirements and things that are changing globally. And that is kind of a verbal summary, if you will, of a solution that we have digitally called Reg Tracker that allows folks to get a digital summary of those regulatory updates on a weekly basis. So we have those partners join and share those updates. Then we'll typically transition into having some best practice sharing, so presentations on different solutions that people have or are exploring. So we have one of our subscribers share and present on their return to work programs and strategies. And they shared very lengthy documentation and procedures for how they were going about doing that. I think that were very helpful. And then if we don't necessarily have a best practice to share, the other thing that we've had our leaders, the EHS leaders from the community join and talk about is what challenges they're facing, and more pose it as an open dialogue of questions and things that they're thinking about and grappling with, and trying to learn how others are handling and managing those. So it's a really great way to network and also do some best practice sharing. And then the third portion of the call will typically provide updates on the various COVID pandemic Gensuite specific solutions that we're working on. I mean, I had mentioned the Reg Tracker solution. We also have a pandemic exposure and contact log solution that we have released and have been working with all of our subscribers to deploy. There's a number of different solutions we've developed over the past couple months, so we'll typically reserve the last portion of the call to cover updates on that. And we're going to be continuing our call schedule through the summer. We're adjusting the frequency a bit just because I think with folks taking vacation and stuff like that, once a week is a little bit too much. So we're going to be moving to a bi-weekly schedule. And our next call is actually scheduled for tomorrow morning. So we do it Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern on Fridays.
Thanks, Natasha. There is another question someone has asked. When restrictions have been eased, do you provide in-house training if necessary?
Yes, I mean, in terms of how we support our customers on deployment, We do virtual sessions. We do, via webinar. We do more movie-based training, and we do in-person training. I think really what we're going to need to just watch is, as things open up, how we do that in-person training and session safely for our team as well as the customer team. And I'm sure that's going to be, organized with socially distant structure in some type of a conference room, masks, all of that. I mean, no different than current policies that businesses have right now with returning to work. I think we have a few more minutes, so if folks have any other questions about PPE inventory management or other things that we're doing in the COVID-19 pandemic response space, or just about Gensuite, Amber and I are more than happy to answer those for you.
Rebecca, I know we did have another poll prepared for the end of our session. Perhaps that's something we can go ahead and activate a little bit early to give people a chance to respond to those questions. Great. Rebecca has indicated that the final poll is now live. So if you would like to access the polls tab and just answer a few quick questions we have for you, please do so. And then if there are any other questions, we will continue to monitor the chat as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, both of you. As we've discussed, there's going to be a lot of people watching this on demand, so they won't necessarily be live with us, but you've given a few different ways that they can get in touch. So I would encourage anyone that has any questions or wants to find out any more about Gensuite, that you can reach out to Amber, reach out to Natasha, but also check out the Gensuite website and leave your contact details, and I'm sure someone will come back to you very quickly. You're based basically worldwide, aren't you? So there's always someone that can reach out, regardless of whether anyone's based in the US or Europe or anywhere else. So that's good to know.
Great. Well, thanks, Rebecca, and the whole HSE People virtual conference team. This has really been an awesome experience, and we hope folks found value from the discussion today, and we really enjoyed getting an opportunity to engage with everyone. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you, both of you, and in particular for sharing with us something that's so important at the moment. It's good to know that everyone's doing what they can to try and help as much as they can at the moment. So I'm sure I speak on behalf of everyone when I say it's very much appreciated.
Great.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Amber and Natasha. And yeah, if anyone wants to follow up, the Gensuite booth is now being manned, and there are people there that can deal with any questions or queries you've got. Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.